we're rolling.
Hello Sunday Clubbers, it's Gloria Good News here and welcome back to Say It With Me, KMPCSCTV. As you can see, I'm a bit of a bookworm. There's nothing I love more than sitting down to read a good story with a cup of tea and a Kit Kat. For the next few weeks, we will be sharing with you one of my favourite Bible stories, the story of Moses. Sam and Beth will be sharing their thoughts on how God looks after us, and we will be learning a brand new memory verse. I know how much you Sunday Clubbers love a good sing-song, so check out the music playlist. I've also heard you're doing a great job with your activity sheets, so keep the creativity flowing. So sit back and let us take you on an adventure which starts in ancient Egypt.
Good morning, boys and girls. Last week at Sunday Club, we were learning about how God was using Joseph in his great plan for his people and his purposes. And Joseph had brought his family, the Israelites, to live in Egypt, where he was the second in command of the whole land. And God blessed that family, Joseph's family, and they grew and they multiplied, and there were so many of them. God was in charge and he was growing his people. But quite soon after, the kind Pharaoh died and a big nasty Pharaoh came to power. And this Pharaoh did not like the Israelites. This Pharaoh was jealous that the Israelites were strong and big and numerous. And he wanted to stop them from growing. So he decided to turn them into slaves. He made them build cities, big buildings, so that they could live in a grander place. But they didn't pay the Israelites. They didn't take care of the Israelites. In fact, they mistreated them, and they bullied them, and they whipped them, and they forced them to do hard work. In fact, at one point, they even took away the bricks that they were using, and they forced them to make the bricks before they actually built with them. This Pharaoh was very, very mean. But even in the midst of that, God blessed his people Israel, and they grew, and they grew, and they grew. So Pharaoh's plan wasn't working. He needed another more severe plan. And this plan was all about killing. Pharaoh ordained that all of the Israelite baby boys were to be thrown in the river as soon as they were born. What a terrible thing to happen. But God also had his hand in this situation, working out that his ways were far better and far more powerful than any Pharaoh's. And God raised up two special midwives who were at the birth of a little baby whom we know as Moses. And those midwives loved God and feared God and did not want to obey evil Pharaoh. And so baby Moses was not thrown in the river, and baby Moses was protected. But if you have a baby in your house or in your wider family, you will know that it's quite hard to keep babies quiet. So after about 3 months, it was decided that baby Moses had to move somewhere else. There had to be another plan to protect Moses' life. So Moses' sister, Miriam, and his mummy made a waterproof basket. And as you'll know, they placed baby Moses in the basket, and they put the basket on the River Nile. They put the basket near Pharaoh's palace. And I'm sure they felt worried about that. Imagine placing the baby right in the path of the evil ruler who actually wanted to kill all the babies. Nonetheless, the Lord was with baby Moses. And Pharaoh's daughter, the princess, was out bathing by the edge of the river. And she and her friends gradually heard a baby crying. And when they went to investigate, of course, they found the basket with baby Moses in it. The princess instantly wanted to love and protect this baby, even though she knew it was a Hebrew, an Israelite baby. But she also knew she was a very busy lady and she would need someone to look after him. So Miriam suddenly appears and lo and behold offers to go and fetch her mummy to be able to come and feed and look after baby Moses as a child. God's plan was at work. God was looking after this baby because he had a plan for Moses that was going to be enormous for God's people and for us. Baby Moses grew up to be boy Moses and then big man Moses. And he grew up in the palace. God placed him there because God needed Moses to speak to Pharaoh. All of this time as Moses was growing up, the Egyptians were still mistreating the Israelites. The Israelites were beaten all the time. They never rested, they never stopped. They were starved. It was a terrible situation. They were devastated in their lives. And so God told Moses, go speak to Pharaoh and ask him to let my people go. Now Moses was a little bit worried about this. In fact, he was very worried about it. His knees knocked and his teeth chattered because he knew that if he really did go in and see Pharaoh and it was the bad time of the day, he could very well have his head chopped off. Pharaoh was that kind of a guy. So God told him, don't worry, Moses. I will be with you. I will protect you. And Moses took strength from the Lord and he went and he approached Pharaoh and he said, will you let my people, God's people, the Israelites, go? And of course, Pharaoh said no. That was his workforce. He didn't want to let them go. He wanted his buildings built. He wanted his cities to grow. And Pharaoh said no. So God had to take action. God sent what we know as the 10 plagues to the Egyptians. He made water turn to blood. He made icky bugs and frogs pop up everywhere in the Egyptians' houses. All of their animals got sick. Hail pounded down on them. He even turned their daylight into darkness. And still Pharaoh said no. You can't take my workers away. But God brought a final and devastating plague on the Egyptians. All of their firstborn sons were to die, including the firstborn son of Pharaoh himself. And because God is all powerful and because God never breaks his promises, it's exactly what happened. And Pharaoh was devastated and he was angry. And he said to Moses, take them. Go. Get out of my sight. And Moses led the people of God out of Egypt and out of slavery. Now, it would be great to say that the story ended well and that everybody lived happily ever after, but it didn't end there because Pharaoh got extra angry once they'd left and he realised he'd probably made a mistake. And he raised up his army and his chariots and he said, go after them, chase them and bring them back. God's people by this time had reached the edge of the Red Sea, which by the way is not red, it's blue, if the sky's blue. The Red Sea is a big, big sea. It's like an ocean. And God had led the people there with a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day. And suddenly, the Israelites were trapped. To go forward, they were going to be drowned in a big sea. To turn back, the Egyptians were chasing them with their chariots and horses. What were they going to do? Had God left them? Had God forgotten about them now he'd brought them out of Egypt? That baby Moses, who became big man Moses, God was going to use him right now. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea in front of them. And God sent his wind and he blew it into a path along the Red Sea. And on the left side was an enormous wall of water, and on the right side of the path was another enormous wall of water, stretching high into the sky. But in front of the Israelites, there was a dry path to walk on. This was not just a short bridge across a little river. This could have been 4 or 5 hours of a walk across the Red Sea, and not one of them had wet feet. God protected them and brought all the Israelites right the way across the Red Sea. And as soon as the last person had set foot on the other side, the waters crashed in and became the Red Sea again. And of course, Pharaoh's army were destroyed as the waters covered the ground again. Boys and girls, we have an amazing story. We're part of it now. But God had chosen Moses to make his people into trusting people, into people who had to follow his way, who had to go through difficult things, but who knew that God would rescue them and protect them, who would take them out of slavery and misery and bring them into freedom. We also have a rescuer. We have Jesus, who pulls us out of slavery to ourselves and selfishness and sin. And he brings us through Jesus' forgiveness into freedom and new life. This is a great story, the next part of God's plan. Let's trust that this God, who's working out his purposes through the Old Testament and New, is also working out his purposes through Jesus, working out his salvation in us.
Sam, what are you doing up that tree?
I'm surveying the land.
I'm not sure that's a good idea.
Whoa! Whoa! I'm okay, Beth. The branches broke my fall. I'm not doing that again.
Good. Climbing trees is dangerous.
I know that now. That bird was pretty mad.
What were you doing up there anyway?
I just wanted to find the best lookout spot ever so I could see everything.
It is nice to have a good view. My family went to the Grand Canyon last year.
Ooh, let me guess. It was grand.
Yes, it was. And it felt like you could see everything from up there.
That must have been a great view.
It certainly was. But you know, Sam, God has the best view.
Really?
Yeah, he can see everything. And the cool part is, he sees us and takes care of us.
Is he always watching?
Yep, he doesn't even stop to sleep.
Good thing, because I need a lot of looking after.
You certainly do, Sam.
You know, Beth, I could give you some excellent tree climbing tips.
Whatever, Sam.
Time for this week's memory verse. I'm going to take it really easy on you, and we're going to learn it in 3 parts. This week, next week, and the week after. And we're actually going to really make it really easy because we're going to start at the end and learn what book it's from in the Bible, and what chapter, and what verse. So if you look behind me, you will see this big long word. And that's because our verse is from the book of Deuteronomy. Can you say that? Deuteronomy. And it's found in chapter 6 and verse 5. So let's try that together again. Our verse is found in Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 5. Brilliant. Now, I'll let you in on a little secret. I didn't just start at the end of the verse to make things easy for you and to give you a bit of a break from all your learning. I started with the end of the verse because I wanted to tell you something really special about the book of Deuteronomy. You see, we've started talking about the life of Moses. And what we're going to learn from Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 5 is a very special thing that Moses told the children of Israel about how to live well for God. So these are some of the last words that Moses ever spoke to the children of Israel. So they're really, really important. So I want you to tune in next week when we will learn what Moses thought was so important to tell the children of Israel. But for now, we're going to remember that we can find these words in Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 5.